Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and start with our next breakout session. So it's my pleasure to introduce Monica Hudson. So Monica is coming to us from San Francisco. So she's at the University of San Francisco. In her past career, she was also the director of the Bayview Resource Center in the Bay Area, which is part of the Renaissance Incubator in San Francisco. And some of you might have heard the organization is doing some wonderful work in the Bay Area. And then also she's on the board of a program called NIFTY, which some of you might be using, the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, which is used in a lot of the high schools in the United States. So with that, please join me in welcoming Monica.
Good morning. This is not a lecture, okay? You are not my students. I am really happy to work with you today. This is an exercise that we do pretty commonly in my capstone class at the University of San Francisco. It is part of our assessing leadership potential and really kind of sending our students out into the world with a lifelong learning attitude. So we'll be talking about this particular instrument today, giving you an opportunity to use it, and hopefully have you consider whether or not it's appropriate in your environment. So all of you should have received both a card and a small piece of paper that has some PIN information on it. So the card should say EMP, it's an index card type thing. Is anybody missing an index card? And then you should also have, like I said, a soft piece of paper that has information on it that says participant, PIN, etc. And we'll give you that information shortly. I noticed some of you have already started using the small card, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So the tool that I'm using at University of San Francisco is called the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile. So I did want to start out by just saying we're having conversations today about your own personality and skill sets. We really want to have everybody affirm that the conversation in this room stays in this room. And so later on in the conference, you might not want to come up to anybody and talk about anything that they might have shared here. So that's just a affirmation that I want to have all of us agree to. So I'm going to be asking a couple of folks around the room if you can basically tell us your name, what's on your quote card, and how do you feel your quote card aligns with something that's in your life today. So I'm just going to call on a couple of tables here to share with us. I don't know your name, but you're in red, and that attracts me, so I'm going to have you introduce.
Some of the things I'm trying to get done at my college in relationship to entrepreneurship, I have the vision, and I'm waiting on the execution to happen, and so, because I don't want to hallucinate about it anymore.
Okay, thank you. Tell me your name, Denise. Okay, just because you happen to be closer, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ray Combs. I'm with Santa Clara University and also San Jose State University. My quote card is from Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." And that's kind of, I guess, well, let's see, how does it relate to me and what I'm doing? I've crossed from industry, 30 years at Silicon Valley. 3 years ago, I started teaching entrepreneurship at the university level. So my mission now in life is to help train up the next batch. And so getting their dreams to be their reality through execution. I like that one too. And that's my role now.
That really speaks to me, as you probably saw. Let's get one more here. I see a couple of people like, don't pick me, don't pick me. I'll pick you.
My name's Adam Martin, and I'm from Norco College in the Inland Empire, which is about an hour and a half up the 15. My quote says, "Lack of money is no obstacle, lack of idea is an obstacle." And I think that's true a lot in institutions of higher learning. We tend to think that we need to have lots and lots of money and it needs to be appropriated and funded before we actually know what we're going to do with it. And it actually, in my experience, has made me a bad steward of those funds, because when I don't have a good path forward or a good idea on what to do, money can't help me solve that problem.
Thank you. And tell me your name again? Adam. This really rings through to me because I often talk to my students about what we call the 7 C's, and one of those C's being capital, and they think that's like the highest one, where we're going through character, commitment, and some of those other ones that are much more crucial in terms of entrepreneurial success. So today's goal is basically to allow you to learn a little bit more about the EMP tool, to gain some insights in terms of your own personal strengths and preferences, to look at this notion of the action plan, which is built into this particular tool and can be used for developing skills, and I'll talk a little later about how I'm using that, and then talk about some opportunities and benefits that can arise from your use of the EMP with students or clients. So I'd like you to look at your slip right now, complete the EMP and send an email. So folks, it looks like most folks have had an opportunity to complete and send the EMP. For those of you who still need a little bit more time, feel free to continue to complete that. What I want to do is, while your items are being scored, I'd like to just kind of walk us through some of the empirical data behind this particular tool and why I chose to take it. So we know that this whole notion of entrepreneurial mindset is important. And we know it's important particularly for students as well as folks who are in companies right now. There was a 2012 study from Deloitte which looked at what basically happens for companies that were identified as being entrepreneurial and what the market results were. And the conclusion from that study was that folks who saw themselves, or companies that saw themselves as entrepreneurial, outperformed peer organizations in growth, profitability, and productivity. In 2021, a white paper was put together that looked at this whole notion, again, of mindset. And so for those of us in the room who definitely want this empirical data before we're going to start to use anything. One of the things that is foundational for this particular instrument is that there are specific beliefs that we see associated with entrepreneurial mindset. We've seen that with a variety of other tools that folks have used. How many of you have used DISC? The MBTB, tool. Colors, so there's a variety of other tools. But what we wanted to, or what the authors of this particular instrument wanted to do was figure out how to assess it and then figure out the aspects that needed to be worked on, not just thought about, but implemented. So they came to a couple of conclusions. One is that this notion of entrepreneurial mindset is multifaceted. It's more like a profile. Some aspects are probably hardwired. Some aspects are more influenced by, skills. And I call this a comparison of nurture versus nature, and the personality pieces being much more nature, and the skills pieces being much more nurture, or life experiences. And this is really critical for me to emphasize with my students who have had limited, relatively, life experiences, and therefore might be discouraged by some of what it is they find out through the use of this tool. So the authors of this instrument looked at classifying and developing scales that were designed to look at not only just traits and behaviors and cognition, but also to look at actions and the implementation, and to compare and gather this information from entrepreneurs as well as corporate managers. And I think this is a very interesting aspect of the tool, in that you've got two sets of folks that students might be comparing themselves to really look at whether or not the instrument allowed for a distinguishing factor between entrepreneurs and corporate managers. So this particular instrument has 14 scales, 7 of them related to personality, 7 of them related to skills. And the report, which is generated from this, looks very similar to what you are about to receive. So you'll get a sample report. It will carry a definition, a very brief definition of the personality scales and the skills scale. The nice thing, particularly for younger folks, is there's also a video embedded in the report, so they can actually look at that as opposed to reading about the detailed information. Then they get a sample, which allows them to compare themselves to entrepreneurs and executive managers. So you'll notice here that the green scale refers to entrepreneurs, the blue to corporate managers, and then the red to how they rank on the 7 dimensions of personality. Skills information is similarly provided, and then how they rank as compared to corporate managers and entrepreneurs on skills. There also in the report is a very detailed analysis on each factor that is part of the measurement, so that if folks wanted to go into that level of detail, they actually can. So, I want you to check your email. I'm about to release your results. They should have been calculated during this time period so that you can look at your own EMP feedback. So you've all been scored, and you should now be seeing your links. Are you getting your reports? You just got yours? Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to, kind of ask you a little bit about what you saw here, but I'm also very cognizant of our time. So let me just kind of bring us through this whole notion of how am I using this particular tool with my students. So I tell my students you're taking this twice. I administer it basically right after the first day of class when I've had a chance to go over syllabi and everything else and expectations for the semester. And my students get 10 points for completing it, so it does encourage compliance. Okay? I also let them know that they'll be taking it again at the course end. And I tell them right up front, this is your leadership exercise program throughout the semester. So I also emphasize what the EMP doesn't do, but what I do want to emphasize is what it does. It allows them to consider ways that they may want to enhance one or more elements of what they considered here. I remind them that there's 14 scales, and then I ask them to pick one item from personality and one from skills. And specifically, I say that it can be one item that they want to develop compared to an entrepreneur or corporate manager. Or it could be one that they already feel that they're strong in and they want to develop it even further. It's not important to me which two they select, just that they select two. Then I set up my Canvas site so that every 10 days they get a reminder. Throughout the semester, I want you to exercise your one personality and your one skill or dimension with something that may be suggested either in the action guide or through the fact that I'm having them interface with career services for post-graduation support and or their life experiences, what they're doing with boyfriend and girlfriend, what they may be doing with parents, okay? Life, in essence, is part of that skills piece, and I want them to use that for the purpose of practice. semester, after they've taken this a second time, they are required to write a 2 to 3 page reflection paper, specifically analyzing the change from beginning of semester to end of semester. And again, I don't care if it goes up or down. I care that they understand and think about how they affected that change. I had a student whose parent died during the semester. He had an action orientation at the beginning that was higher than his subsequent one at the end, and he explained it from that particular incident. So I indicate that the reflection is going to be used in one of two ways, and I'll go through the second one first, okay? I tell them, you want a letter of recommendation from me for grad school, I'm going to be pulling it from your reflection, okay? Because grad school already knows if you're an accounting major, you probably know something about accounting. But what they're trying to figure out is how you fit in as a member of their team. And so I want you to be able to talk about that, and I'm going to pull from your analysis of that in my assessment as to how well I know the candidate in terms of a letter of recommendation. I also remind them that this reflection is something they can draw on as they're going through job interviews. That they can talk about the fact that when they're asked about, why should we hire you over the 50 other people who are competing for this particular position, they can talk about the fact that, great question, interviewer, I did an assessment of myself at the beginning of my capstone and at the end. Over that time period, I worked diligently on trying to enhance my skills or my personality efforts, and I was able to make this change, and here is why this is important for you, competent interviewer. The final thing I say to them is that there's really no single profile that's going to allow them to, in essence, be the ideal student, entrepreneur, or human being. And so that concludes what I wanted to share with you today. I do want to indicate that if you know somebody that you feel might benefit from using the EMP, you can get this information here. I am also happy to send the slide deck to anyone who is interested in following up a little further. And I do want to indicate that I am using the data, because I've been using this tool since about 2016, in a paper that we're calling Can They Move the Needle, where I'm looking at this whole notion of the pre and the post, both from the scoring perspective, but also from the reflection. So it's a mixed method study. I've also had the fortune of doing a Fulbright in Columbia and using this data as part of work with the Chamber of Commerce there, where we are, in essence, trying to test out a hypothesis that I had. This particular instrument was developed in the US and Western Europe. I'm not so sure it works in a collectivist society. These scales I offer are probably very differently perceived in societies that are more collectivist. And what we are finding so far, we've got about 3,000 responses that we're looking at, is that that is true. But we need to do a little bit more work on kind of summarizing that and offering to Eckhart that this particular instrument might need to be tailored to the particular region of the world and the cultural context within which it's being administered, because it's not necessarily just based on states. So thank you very much for your time. Happy to talk with anyone. I know we're running a little bit behind up here with applause next door. So again, thank you for your time. Let's go ahead. I'm using it from a career context. I'm using it for a personal leadership development. We've used it in Columbia for the Chamber of Commerce, assessing the effectiveness of their business training and leadership training work.
I think we have time for a question or two if anybody has a question they want to ask.
So are there other questions that I can, answer?
Yes.
original paper, which I found in clinical psychology, speaks to that whole issue. If you look at the instrument and look at the detailed report, those items that are italicized are scored. So I'm not sure exactly how, it's really what they did in terms of weighting and seeing if anything weighted in terms of that. But happy to refer you to the original paper, and the instrument authors are there, so you can actually find that in 2016.
Does anybody use this? Does anybody use it in their classes? So coincidentally, I got paired up with Monica as a moderator, and I actually use this in my class as well. And the reason why I like it is because it also works with management students. So in our entrepreneurship courses, we have a lot of students who are not entrepreneurs. And so the assessment actually does it both for corporate world and the entrepreneurial world. So it really helps the students who are in the management track to get assessed as well while they're taking an entrepreneurship course. So I kind of find it very valuable, as Monica does as well. And one thing she didn't mention is that you actually go through a training program to be able to assess the instrument in your classes. So then you get partnered up with a peer group of folks who are doing this, so you get a lot of support from others. And then also there's a lot of people who do this privately as practitioners with real people in the real world, so not just with students. And then they build their consultancy practice around using the assessment and helping those entrepreneurs with coaching and mentoring and activities. So.
Yeah, ECRIT is up to about 600 trained practitioners in this. One of the things that I'm hoping to do is to get all of us to, in essence, pull that data, because it's a very large and rich data pool to, in essence, see, okay, what kinds of factors do we need to further consider as we're moving forward with this. So, all right?
Yeah, quick question on, I mean, it's a powerful tool. Is there a cost to the school to use it or to license it, or?
There is a licensing cost for educational institutions.
I was
Charge,
on the website,
yeah,
I didn't see it.
they're happy to talk with you about it. And like I said, I used it in Colombia, and because the currency and economics were so different, they were able to negotiate a different kind of price in that area as well.
So we pay $25 a
And
student.
we pay $25
to
for a student.
25. And so like in my class, there is no textbook, so this offsets the cost of the textbook.
And so the $25 pre and post and a report comes out of that. So, and the students pay that as opposed to